Good morning, everybody, and welcome to It Just Means More Football and Coffee, where college football never stops, and neither does our cup of coffee. Good morning, Craig. How are you? It's good to see you. Tell me what you got going on this morning. I see your Sanford background there with the G. Got it on your chest, got it behind your head, so we're fully UGA'd out over there. What you drinking from? You got a Georgia mug for me, too?
You know what? I don't have my Georgia mug this morning. I got my dark roast. But again, we are going to call all collectives. We are not going to discriminate. If you want to send us some coffee, I like the whole bean. I like to grind mine every morning. Definitely love to have it. But actually, I am at the car dealership this morning. Car needed to get fixed, so I've got the in my heart. I'm at Sanford Stadium. What about you? What's going on? Not only what are you drinking, but last week we heard a little bit about me. I'd love to hear more about you.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I'm in South Carolina, obviously in the upstate, so I am repping the Burns Rebels today. My Maxwell house is steaming out of this Burns Rebels mug. If you're not aware of Burns, national powerhouse through the mid 2000s there. Bobby Bentley, head coach, later on staff at South Carolina, Auburn, UCF, USF. Father of Jake Bentley, who played quarterback at South Carolina and
Five other places.
Yeah. All his kids are college quarterbacks. His daughter is a college athlete as well. So shout out to the Bentleys and shout out to Burns. For those of you who don't know me, I guess we're on episode 3 here, so you've heard my voice a lot if you've been listening. But if you're just tuning in, my name's Rob Williams, and I grew up in the state of South Carolina. I'm a third generation season ticket holder for the Gamecocks. It's just been a part of who I am my entire life. And so SEC football, this year is going to be crazy because I just think about what's in my blood and growing up is that CBS 3:30 with the music and the best matchup and the whole thing. And so it's just, life kind of revolved around it. I grew up where my mom's parents actually began getting season tickets in the 60s. And so my mom grew up her entire life going and started dating my dad in high school, and he's been to games ever since then. And so it's just always our life kind of stopped. I had one of those situations where not only was my dad really into football and leading me that way, but my mom could, sit down and name every starting NFL quarterback with me and that sort of thing growing up. So it's been fun. My wife is a 2-time graduate of South Carolina, and so I'm married, got a little girl. And my fun fact is that I got to propose on top of Williams-Brice. So in addition to marrying a 2-time alum, I got to stand up there and surveil the whole thing. Actually, it was the beginning to tie it full circle with your Georgia stuff and some of our discussion before we went on air here.
Yep.
It was the beginning of Coach Muschamp's tenure at South Carolina, and we were supposed to be on the field instead of on top of the press box. But they were afraid he would send kickers over, and if he sent kickers over to kick, they would have had to kick us off mid-proposal. And so the staff said they were very unaware of his tendencies because he had just started. It was August of his first season, and if they said if it was still Coach Spurrier, we would know exactly what he's going to do and when he's going to do it because we kind of learned what he does. But anyway,
you got to check the film on that. What was he doing? What was he doing in Florida? What was that pregame routine? But I will agree. Last year when I was at Mississippi State for the Georgia game, I had to watch out. I was sitting there on the sidelines and they're trying to hit like the field goal post. I swear I almost got hit about 3 or 4 times. So yeah, definitely got to keep your head in a swivel.
You never know. They're across the field. Across the street at the practice facility. Yep. But if you just decide to send somebody over to the stadium, then I guess that's where you're at. So yeah, I'm repping the Maxwell house once again. So
Pinky's
collectives out there. Yeah,
Pinky's up.
It's up. All right, it's only, we fancy over here. If anybody wants to send us and sponsor collectives across the SEC, we would love to push people in your direction. So we'll hit you up. You hit us up. We'll let our people talk to your people. And you can find us SEC football and coffee at gmail.com if you want to just shoot us an email, or you can DM us, whatever you collective people want to do out there. We love NIL around here. All right, so what's up on the schedule today, Craig? Our main course here. We hope you guys have gotten your cup of coffee and that you're sitting down with a nice breakfast. Personally, this morning I went with the jelly biscuits and eggs. And so I don't know what you guys are doing on this beautiful Saturday morning, but we would love for you to sit down and talk college football with us. The crazy thing about talking college football right now is what's going on with the schedule? Because here we are in February. We talked a little bit last week about the National Signing Day. It used to be just such a buzz in February around National Signing Day. Now, everything is loaded into December to the point that seemingly there's nothing to talk about right now. Now, we know there's no offseason. College football is always going. It's always moving. There's always going to be breaking news. And, we'll talk a little bit about Ross Dellinger's report from Yahoo earlier in the week about college football playoff continued expansion. But before we get to that, what are your thoughts? What should we be talking about right now? How could things change and shift to get 1,000 topics out of December and get it concentrated? The news cycle, it just doesn't flow. It doesn't make a lot of sense with what they're doing.
Yeah, it's kind of like that ADD comes out. Is like there's so much going on. I can only imagine what it's like for a coach because there's so much to balance and so much to go through. What I did is I sort of looked at the college football calendar and I put together basically a 12-month idea because, like I said, everything's so compressed right now. What I think is the most logical thing that's going to happen, we're going to push that National Signing Day back from December to August. Now, before, we start crying like, oh my gosh, what about these coaches that are going to get fired? Well, listen, we already know they're going to be moving on. Once that coach gets fired, all those national letters of intent are open back up. Those guys can go sign anywhere. We do that in August. That's going to take some pressure off. That's going to alleviate something from December. From August to November, we're focusing on ball. Okay. We're playing football on Thursdays and Saturdays. And if we're the MAC or the Sun Belt, we'll play Mondays or Wednesdays or Tuesdays or whatever they think is whatever ESPN wants them to do. But then once we get to December, we are all about championships, the portal, and the playoff. The championships are going to be that first week of December. Portal opens up right after that. Again, we have that month-long portal. We have the month-long portal. It'll kick longer based on coaching changes, things like that.
It's never ending based on coaching changes and stuff like that. Here we are.
Right. But here's the thing. You can't move the portal. If you want guys in for spring ball and you want to see or get a true evaluation, you got to have December because the calendar is going to start in January. The classes are going to start in January at some point. Right. They've got to be there. And then we'll have some bowl games sprinkled in there. So that takes at least one thing off. And then in February, right about now, so in addition to grabbing, going and getting your card for your little Valentine, we're going to keep National Signing Day more important here. February is going to be that National Signing Day. August is going to probably take care of about 60 to 70% of that roster. And then you can have that last 20 to 25% take place in that traditional National Signing Day, kind of give some clarity, allow some things to really space out, because what that is also going to do, it's going to give some players some time to look at, well, what is this team doing in the portal? Where do I fit in? What does that look like long term? And then March and April, let's focus just on spring ball. March 1st, like we've got teams right now that are starting spring ball. We've got teams that are going to be starting spring ball in a couple of weeks. March 1st to April 30th, there's your spring ball period. It's something that will generate a news cycle. We've got plenty of different things that they can do. We've got plenty of spring games out there. Let's have some fun with it. Let's have that. And then right after that's over, first couple of weeks of May, there's your spring portal. Right now, the spring portal is going to be open for 2 weeks. Let's have it the first 2 weeks of May. We're open. We're ready to go again. As some things change. As I lose a job, I need to go find somewhere else. Maybe I'm going to promote. There's an opportunity there. Once that portal closes, the end of May, we are going to do a schedule release. And as college football czar, and because I get to create the schedule, we're going to release conference schedules in reverse order, starting with whoever was the lowest conference, in this case, the MAC. And then the last one this year would be the Big Ten because they won the national championship. But let's have it coordinated every day. Every conference gets to have their own idea. We get that whole set. We get the narrative set around that particular conference. It's set up. It's coordinated. June, maybe we take a break. Maybe the coaches get to go to Lake Burton or they get to go somewhere and actually enjoy themselves.
Wouldn't that be a novel idea where you're not working every single second of your life, and we wouldn't run off every coach to be an offensive coordinator for a powerhouse team or go to the NFL. Makes sense.
Yep. And then finally, in July, we do our media days. And then we start the cycle all over again. What this does, it gives us a 12-month coordinated schedule of figuring out when do we have early signing periods, when do we're playing ball, when are we talking portal, when are we crowning a champion, and then, thinking about spring ball. It's a little bit more coordinated, but it is going to need some sort of conference czar, some sort of thing. That's where Greg Sankey's going to come in. I know Tony Petiti's there. He's just sitting there in support. He's going to do whatever Greg wants him to do. But that's going to be when he calls in Rob and Craig for that suggestion. That's what's happening.
So I got a couple of thoughts, and we're going to work our way through this. I like what your schedule does, and I love the way that it breaks down. To your last point, I'm going to work backwards. Why do we drag our feet with acknowledging the fact that Greg Sankey is the guy to run this thing? I think at the end of the day, he has the most experience, he has the most pull, and he's running the biggest the most powerful conference as it currently stands, especially in the college football landscape. But we can honestly make an argument across athletics if we're going to throw other major sports in there, like men's basketball, baseball, even, I would include women's basketball in that too, as far as the way that we're seeing kind of revenue crank up. As we look at some of these bigger sports, overall, you're going to have the SEC as the powerhouse conference across the board. Even and we can just take football for this discussion because that's the purpose of this podcast. I don't know why we're dragging our feet, other than people have their certain thoughts and biases around Greg Sankey who are not coming from an SEC perspective. And, fair enough that you would think, if you're from an outside perspective, well, he's not looking out for our best interests, right? Like, if I'm coming from an ACC perspective, then I'm not necessarily, jumping up and down for Greg Sankey, because is he really going to look out for the ACC? No, I think he's going to look out for the best of college football. Yep. And obviously, he does have a vested interest in the SEC as its own individual conference. But the moves and the way that he speaks and the way that he thinks, I think he is working for the betterment of the game and the sport as a whole.
Yeah. See, and with Sankey, he's going to do what's best for the SEC, but he has a global mindset. This is a guy who wasn't, born and raised in the South. He was born in upstate New York, went to school in upstate New York. He was also a commissioner of a small conference in the Southland. So he's got that idea of the broader perspective. Is he going to do what's best for the SEC? Yes, that's his job. That's what he is supposed to do. But he also has this idea of, okay, what goes beyond that? He's done a really nice job of that. He learned under Mike Slive and really started to figure out, what is that mindset? How does Alabama, how does Georgia, how does the SEC really differentiate themselves from everybody else? He has figured that out. So if we're going to go forward and college football is going to break off, like Tony talked about last week on our podcast, check it out if you haven't, by the way. That is where we're going to go. Like it makes sense. Sankey becomes that national college football commissioner. He has the idea. He knows what it's going to look like. What is stopping us is the same thing that hurts us all the time, is pride. We have this idea of what college football should be. It's in this little box, and it is what this makes sense. And if you're doing something different, I don't like it. Well, Sankey is willing to disrupt that and really figure out, what's going to be the best for us. So until college football breaks apart, we're going to be stuck in this continuous cycle.
Yeah, to your point, Tony mentioned last week, our managing editor at Last Word on College Football, Tony Siracusa, with us last week talking about the future of college football, the partnership between the Big Ten and the SEC. Again, if you haven't gone back and listened to episode 2, please do so. I'll spoil one thing for you. He said you're looking at two years probably before we see some major changes and some shifts and some of the breaking off or the establishment of the Power 2, or however we want to phrase that. Some of this break of college football from the NCAA. 2 years. Initially, I'm like, oh, 2 years. 2 years is going to fly. 2 years is going to skate by. So people need to get on board, because I think at the end of the day, when those 2 years are over, Greg Sankey is standing at the top of this thing as the commissioner, the czar, the president, whatever title he's going to get. The guy who's calling the shots, I think, is Greg Sankey. All right. I didn't prep you for this. Go ahead.
Real quick. You know who takes Greg Sankey's spot? Greg Byrne at Alabama. slides right in. I think it's a natural fit. He did a great job at Arizona. He's done a great job at Alabama. To me, I think it's a natural fit. Slides right in. So okay, now hit me.
I don't. There's no pushback on Burn from me really, as far as from a resume standpoint. I could see it happening. The win would be the bigger question for me. I think Sankey's got some years left. Okay, so I didn't prep you for this, but you mentioned. I just want to get your thoughts on the spot. You mentioned the spring calendar and how we're going to have spring games coming up in that March to April window, and we like that. What are your thoughts on doing scrimmages against other teams during that spring ball window? Like in the NFL during the preseason, you may have a joint practice where a team is practicing with another team, and then they have their preseason game, and it gives you some live experience. I've heard tons of people say this over the years. College football is the only sport where there's no exhibition game to get cranked up. It's all inter squad against one another until you get to live action. And so the experience that could be gained in from my perspective, if we just had some scrimmage time there, and maybe it is, and I've heard this said, and a guy who I have just grown up on, JC Sherbert, who covers the Gamecocks with 24/7 Sports, he has made the point multiple times. If you lose that, so let's say that you're a SEC team and you schedule a Sun Belt team, or you schedule an FCS, a Wofford or a Furman, coming from my South Carolina perspective, right?
Sure.
And you lose that scrimmage because you're really tinkering with things. You got a bunch of backup guys in there. You're trying to see guys' best role. The blowback on a head coach from an SEC school losing to an FCS school, even though it's an exhibition game that doesn't count and you're really experimenting, fans won't understand that, and that's a little bit of the pushback that comes with that. I'm still in favor of rolling those dice. I've heard Shane Beamer advocate for that from a South Carolina perspective. Just the opportunity to engage other local schools. You think about raising up that lower level and investing in the schools that are in your surrounding area within your state. I think it'd be beneficial. What are your thoughts on scrimmages in the spring?
It's the biggest challenge. This is the power dynamic. Coaches like the spring game right now because they control everything. They know what the script looks like. They know who can get hit, who cannot get hit. What is that level of intensity going to look like? Is it more a show or is it more of a game? As much as I love it, and much as the idea too, you bring in the other schools, I think you're going to have a hard time convincing many coaches to give up that control because of the possible fan backlash, because of the possible idea for an injury, or any of these factors. But here's the other part. I'm going to take the G-Day down, in Athens. That is a party. That is an opportunity for Classic City, the NIL collective, and Georgia to throw a party, to bring Ludacris in, to raise some money. Oh yeah, and we might throw a football game in there at some point too. You are going to lose that if you have the exhibition thing. So I think you're going to get pushback from coaches for control of the actual scrimmage itself, but you're also going to get pushback from boosters and administrators because these are fundraising initiatives. And I'm talking from a more of a bigger school perspective. So I like the idea in theory, in practicality. I don't see it happening.
I think, it goes back to your statement earlier that pride is at the root of that, right? Like if you're a head coach and you need control, and what's at the heart of that is pride. Does it help the game in its purest form if we have exhibitions? Absolutely. Because if you're a college football fan, you care more about the competition and seeing your team play a game than you care about a show. Now, from a financial standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, and recruiting is obviously part of the game, right? And recruiting is just like on another level of insane right now, and the dollars that are being poured into that, not only with NIL, but even pre-NIL, what schools are putting into recruiting visits and trips, and especially summer type stuff. I think it'll be interesting. I think it would be very, very interesting, but I would love, just personally, I would love to see those exhibitions happen. And I think teams would be a little more prepared. That's all I'm saying. And, I'm looking at it.
ESPN and Fox are going to have to make it financially viable. If they do that, yes, we're going to have exhibitions. If
they
not,
could do it.
But I'm saying if they want, that's where that money's going to come from.
Yep.
If there is no money there is no idea.
Well, when we're talking football in the spring, the NFL has ended. Super Bowl was just played last week, right? And so we kind of have a quote unquote dead period here for a little bit of time. And what have they done to fill the dead period? Well, we tried the XFL, we tried the USFL. Now those two have merged. You have the UFL. That's going to have their first kick in March. And so you're going to get this a little abbreviated schedule with this other league, and it's really a minor league NFL. You got a bunch of guys that have been cut off of rosters. They're going to get picked up by these teams. They're going to put it on display. You're going to get some scouts checking out the tape, and they're going to make a roster for the fall. If we're trying to fill this time window with football so that we get it a little more in the 365 window, it does make sense for ESPN and Fox to put some money into it and say, the viewership. You would go back to the bowl argument. People say that bowls are irrelevant and blah blah blah, but you're still getting tons and tons of eyes on these bowl games, and they're making the networks money because people are tuning in. Because on a random day in December, when the schedule is loaded, it's a Tuesday, Christmas week, people are out of work, and you're either watching, guys grocery games on Food Network, or you're tuning into a MAC matchup in a bowl game, or with the Sun Belt or something like that. So,
Right.
And people are doing that. So I don't see it being any different in the spring. There's just random Seinfeld reruns that we've all seen 15 times, or there's a game on. So I think people will tune into that. It's about the time when I start watching YouTube reruns and the ESPNU game of the week from the 2018 college football season or whatever, because I'm just itching for some football. So I think it would work really well. The other thing that you mentioned was with the moving signing day back to August, I think is one of the things that is the most polarizing in terms of this conversation. And I love the fact that if we do that, you're right. I think that it does push emphasis back to the February signing period, because there are going to be guys who not only want to wait and see what happens with those teams over the course of the season, what happens with them in the portal, what happens with some coaching moves, whatever the case may be. But you're also going to have your mid to lower tier recruits or your late bloomers who are going to really blossom during that senior season, and they're going to get more offers. And that's going to open up the opportunity for coaches to have locked down, like you said, 60% of that signing class prior to the season. And then during season, not only are we focused on ball, but coaches are also focused on ball, because they don't have to recruit as much. And the recruiting that they do have time for will be really mining for those diamonds in the rough. And so you're going to be able to find more guys who are in that 2-3 star type of range that are going to be able to come in. Maybe you're coming in as a PWO, or maybe you're coming in as a last minute filler on a scholarship spot. And some of those guys turn out to be some of the best players that you have. So I think that would be really, really interesting, and give some opportunities to some of those guys that are kind of late to the party in terms of what their production in high school looks like. The example that I would give is, athlete running back Daniel Hill in this last class. It really came down to South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Alabama. And he's a Mississippi kid. And the recruiting was back and forth the whole time. And basically the story was that he leaned heavily South Carolina, but his dad leaned heavily Alabama. And then it's back and forth. He moved his announcement multiple times. And then you get into close to the signing day, everybody's crystal balling Mississippi State. Kid ends up at Alabama. Saban leaves. They portal in running backs, the whole thing. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see how that works. How would that shift and change if we move that signing day to August? I think it changes a lot of stuff.
It does, and there's a lot of stuff that's unforeseen there, because what's going to happen? I sign in August, and all of a sudden I sign at South Carolina, and then all of a sudden Georgia calls. You know what I'm saying? Like, because
absolutely.
And I'm not saying that to be a jerk, but you just know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. So it's an unintended consequence with that. So
yeah, and I think that is a little bit of the pushback. All right, so if you like Craig's schedule, then let us know. Send us a DM. Again, it's at McMichael7, at Rob Williams GCP on Instagram, on Twitter, on X, whatever you want to call it. We would love for you guys to do that. Comment on YouTube. Leave us subscribe and rate on Spotify. You can also send us an email if you have questions, comments, if you think we're great, if you think we suck. Either way, content is content, SEC football and coffee at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Right now, we have a great interview that Craig did with a buddy, former student of his, an Ole Miss grad, talking about what's happening down there with Lane Kiffin. So here we go, interview with Alex Hosko coming right up.
All right, welcome back. We're here with Alex Hosko, graduate of Ole Miss from 2018, and also one of my dearest and closest friends. I have to thank Alex. Last year, I went down to Ole Miss, went down to the Grove, and it was Alex who gave me all of that information. Alex, how are you? I would say this morning, but why don't you tell us a little bit, where you're at, because we're usually recording in the morning.
Yeah, Craig, thank you for having me. This is my kind of second podcast that you've got me on. The first one was the guys at the bottom right corner. I don't know if you remember that back in 2021. I was actually going back. Good guys, sweet dudes. But no, it's 10:30 here. I currently live out in Japan. I've known Craig. He was actually my high school teacher back in the day. We Civil War class, I think 2013.
Sounds about right.
Graduated 2014. Go way back with Craig, but yeah, just out here for work. But he wanted to get together, talk Ole Miss football. I'm an Ole Miss grad, and I could not turn down that opportunity because no one ever asks for my opinion, and it needs to be heard.
You're one to give your opinion, whether it's asked or not, usually anyway. So I thought it was a perfect opportunity. I want to start off with where we're at now. You were a freshman, I believe, when Ole Miss knocked off Alabama in Oxford. Is that correct? I seem to remember. Remember seeing some videos there.
Storm the field. I still have that video. I was 18 years old. Woke up at like 3 a.m. to go to college game day. Consumed a lot of clear liquor. Again, hand up as an 18-year-old. Kids don't drink underage. It's in Oxford, Mississippi, but and I remember it was a tough game, and Ole Miss came back probably the last 10 minutes, and probably no shit until I have like a son, the best day of my life. 100%.
Yeah, those 2 years, I would say, 15 and 16. You had Dr. Bo at quarterback. You had Brother Hugh as the coach. I mean, Ole Miss seemed to be ascending. And then I feel like Houston Nutt and a burner phone brought that program down. Can you talk a little bit about that arc? And then we'll get to the good stuff here in a minute with current day. But can you talk a little bit about that arc of where you kind of felt like you were at as a freshman and sophomore versus, where it maybe ended up as a senior?
Yeah, so freshman year, I don't remember if a lot of people remember. I'm sorry, Ole Miss and Mississippi State were the two teams. There was a point, depending which poll you looked at, Ole Miss was 1, Mississippi State was 2, vice versa. I still have the Sports Illustrated cover where it's that Photoshop of them celebrating together.
Yep.
It was a great year. I think Dak was still quarterback at Mississippi State back then.
Yep.
But it was an incredible year, I remember. And I was the first one in my family to go to Ole Miss. It was a total fluke. I wanted to get out of state. Craig and I, both Michigan men. My parents were like, good luck paying for it. Figure out a way. So I found scholarship money. I found ways to pay for it. And I was no stellar student. So what better place to go to than Ole Miss, which is if you have a pulse, you can get in. And out-of-state tuition was damn near nothing. So it was a perfect match. And then I visited Oxford in April. And coming from Michigan to Oxford in April, there were birds singing. I remember my dad on the tour was like, this is a joke. This isn't real. They're piping bird sounds into the Grove right now. And just fell in love and never looked back. Just took it and ran. But yeah, so freshman year, I believe we had the Peach Bowl massacre, which we forget that because the Peach Bowl was Ole Miss versus Penn State this year, where we won.
Yep.
But yeah, freshman year, tough way to end. And I think it was the Laquan Treadwell injury that year.
I believe so.
Yeah. I was on the sideline for that. I had a fortunate gig with a student organization where I watched games from the sideline, and that was tough. And then sophomore year, another great year. Chad Kelly's in at quarterback. Larry Tunsil, left tackle, right tackle, maybe. I apologize, I remember.
Yep.
But that was like Hugh Freeze was just cocky at that point.
Yep.
He was huge. We went to Tuscaloosa. I went to Tuscaloosa for that game. I've never seen a designated driver. It wasn't me, it was my roommate. Never seen a designated driver black out and then sober up again to drive us back to Oxford that night because it was such a long day.
Yep.
He was cashed out by 2 in the afternoon and then slept it off in the car. Came to in like halftime. Was like, what's going on? We're like, hey, we're gonna put this game to bed and we'll go back to Oxford. Capped that game off in New Orleans, Sugar Bowl. So that season off. I was there for that. Great time. That was fell in love with New Orleans. And then I think it was it that summer was the burner phone incident?
Yeah. I feel like that really took that slide because we had recruiting allegations, Tunsil, trouble. But I feel like you had that high, like you had that emotional high. You're coming down to Ole Miss. It's so brand new. It's going up. And then we had that slide. And you graduate in 2018 with Matt Luke. I think it was good guy, did a great job with the as an offensive line coach. Don't think he had the chops to do what he needed to do to be the head coach. So let's get to the fun. The Lane train comes in, and we're going into year 4 with Lane. We've got 10-win seasons. He's the portal king. I think one of the things that you can say about Ole Miss, they always talked about, one of the things I heard is we never lose a tailgate, right? We're not going to lose the party. Oh damn!
Actually, you can't see it. I was going to flip. Are we just doing video or audio too?
Both.
Oh, I should have flipped it around. I got the Never Lose a Party poster on the wall. It's a whole ode to Oxford. But that's true. We never do.
Yep. But I feel like I feel like it's flipped. So I know you're in the house of the rising sun across from the Far East. What has that? What has Lane Kiffin done for you, the Ole Miss alum, the Ole Miss fan, but also talking to some of your fan base? Talk a little bit about what the Lane train does. I noticed the Lane train hat on your head too. So.
Lane train hat. I forget where I'd plug the guys, the real nice guys. They gave me a shout out. I saw them in New Orleans at their pop-up shop. They were the first ones to come to the SIP shirt, and then like Ole Miss completely ripped it off and just made millions on the saying. Yep. I feel bad for the Grind City Designs, I think, out of Memphis. Good dudes. But I feel like from the get-go, I still remember where I was at when Lane Train was announced. That same DD, my college roommate, who's blacked out and sobered up, drives home. I was on his couch. He's a married father of 3 now, 3 boys. So I'm on his couch. We both worked in the same area at the time, and Twitter announces it. They're like, then there was that video of that old style train coming through the mountains.
Yep,
and it was awesome. I mean, you didn't have to be a huge college football fan to know who Lane Kiffin was. Especially with him coming out of Alabama. Everyone knew who he was in the Southeast Conference. So, slow burn first couple years. We have the COVID year, I think, right away. I mean, they got me, though, with the Lane Train announcement. Bought season tickets, still have them. Have yet to see a game from my seats in Oxford, because I always sell them.
Yep.
But I've been fortunate to go to a few Ole Miss games away. I think I went to Tulane this past year. I was in the States for a month. And then slow burn, but we're here. Here's the fun part. The problem though with the fun part is you go 11-2, we're gonna demand that every year on. And that's actually gonna be a point I get to in my notes. Like, it has to be 11-2 every season, or there's going to be mean things said on the internet by guys like myself.
So the expectation has changed. First, it was we're gonna grow. Maybe we'll get to the game by halftime. Lane comes in. Now you're starting to win. You've got some big wins too. I think that LSU win was key this year because Georgia and Alabama were still at that next level. Lane said as much after that game. That, the Georgia Ole Miss game this year was great for about a quarter and a half. I felt like that thing was going to be a shootout. I was looking forward to it. I know we were talking back and forth about it. And then all of a sudden, Georgia just runs away with it. And Lane says, that game showed me we need to do more. We need to go to that next level. We're competing with everybody else in the SEC. They kicked the crap out of Penn State and then the Peach Bowl. Doesn't matter who was out for Penn State. They showed up. They came and played. So that expectation now has changed for Ole Miss fans. Rather than coming for the party, we want to be in the playoff. So with that expectation, we've got Texas and Oklahoma coming to the SEC. We also have an expanded 12-team playoff. What does success look like then for that Ole Miss fan where the expectation now has leveled up to where we got to have 11-2 or I'm coming after you, Lane?
I put in my notes, I put 10-2 minimum regular season.
Yep.
I looked at the schedule. I'm budgeting maybe a Georgia loss. I don't know. Hand up. It's hard for me to follow other college football teams out here in Japan. Sure. I stay true to my Rebs. Yep. I couldn't tell you who's in or out of Georgia, what's going on over there. Budget like a Georgia loss, maybe Oklahoma. I don't know.
Yep.
With this whole expanded SEC, I don't know what it's gonna look like, but you're looking at it has to be 10-2. Some other musts for 2024. You have to prove there's no ceiling. Do I know how you prove that? No, there's no way to quantify that there's no ceiling in Oxford, Mississippi, but we saw it with the Lane rumors in 2023, 2022 to Auburn. Yep. They're like, there's a ceiling in Oxford, Mississippi. There's a ceiling here. Like there's not. But there's space. The stadium, there's not a lot of space to expand. I get it. Oxford's not the biggest town, but this team needs to prove that there is no ceiling in Oxford, Mississippi. And what better time to do it than this first year post Saban? Yep. It's going to be a shakeup. I mean, this transfer portal's madness. It's nuts.
Yep.
So that has to be done. They have to prove there's no no ceiling.
Yep.
And I honestly think those are the biggest two things: 10-2 regular season, prove there's no ceiling, and I put things they have to stay away from: the rat poison. That will be. I'll answer the question for you now. We want to talk rat poison. Yep. It's truly the program's biggest downfall because we always tweet the emojis, no rat poison.
Yep.
Well, we love the rat poison. We feed off the rat poison.
Lane embraces the rat poison. He loves it. Not only going to poke the other team, but he's also going to bring that rat poison on himself.
It's incredible. It was we hadn't even seen the national championship game played yet.
Yeah.
And there are already these way too early polls about Ole Miss being number 5, and we're sharing it on the Ole Miss football Instagram. Yeah. It's like, you got to be kidding me. That's going to be the biggest downfall. It's going to be the rat poison in 2024. So I think that's your biggest key to not losing is don't drink the rat poison.
But I think here's that key. We don't have Joey Freshwater from Knoxville coaching Ole Miss anymore. Lane Kiffin has matured. He has done something different. And what I think is interesting is he had an opportunity to go to Auburn last year. I don't know. I don't think to me, Auburn is in a tricky situation. I think there's a delicate slide there where they could go. If I was Greg Byrne, I would have called Lane Kiffin, and that would have been my choice over Kalen DeBoer. But I don't know if your Alabama elite, the shirt and tie guys down at Bryant Denny, are ready for Lane Kiffin and some of that rat poison kind of coming together. But what I'm interested in and what I'm thinking about as I look at Lane going forward, he knows he can't necessarily recruit like Georgia and Alabama does at Ole Miss. That's just not going to happen. But what he's done a really nice job, he's got the Grove Collective motivated. And I think that's where that rat poison has come in, is he's putting those little carrots out there because the collectives are going to be so important and they're vital for success. Lane understands I'm not going to win at getting the high school recruits, but what I am going to win at is I'm going to win at the portal. I'm going to become the portal king. And he has done a phenomenal job. And he's not, and he came out last year and he said this. He goes, it's a business. It's just like the NFL. I was in the NFL. This is a business, and we have business conversations. I don't know what the conversation was where he's bringing in Spencer Sanders, Walker Howard in a room where Jackson Dart is returning as a starter, and all those guys are staying. I don't think the Grove Collective has that much money, but there's something about what Lane is doing, and it's special. And what I really think is going to be important and what's going to help bring him forward, you've got Pete Golding and Joe Cox from Alabama coming in. He's bringing those Alabama influences in. Now, Alabama fans can gripe all they want about Pete Golding, but they also won some national championships. And here's the thing that Pete does. Pete can recruit. He is recruited he's recruiting high school talent, but he's also huge in the NIL space. So when you talk about ceiling, I want you to be specific. Is it an SEC championship game appearance? Is it a championship? How far is that ceiling? What does success look like in a 12-team playoff for those two?
With the 12-team playoff, and correct me if I'm wrong, again, it's hard to keep up over here in Japan. I focus all my attention on the Rebs. Do you have to win a championship to get in that 12-team playoff? No.
The at-large is, I think, going to be divided up, and this is what's going to happen. I think the Big Ten and the SEC are going to take all those at-large spaces. So you're going to have at least 2 or 3 teams outside of the SEC champion coming to that 12-team playoff.
I think Ole Miss takes an at-large this year. Would love to see an SEC championship, but I'm realistic. Still a lot of big dogs, but again, we haven't seen a Alabama football without Nick Saban in my lifetime of following college football. Who knows about LSU? We talked about how the LSU team I saw, is it Jaden Daniels, the quarterback?
Yeah, yep. He just
the Heisman winner, Jaden Daniels, that I saw was not the one I thought would win the Heisman. I know him as the guy who got beat up by Ole Miss. But again, it's hard to follow everybody out here when you're 13 hours ahead of everybody.
Right.
But I think just get that bid. Get that at-large bid. Don't worry about the SEC championship. Don't worry about winning it. It would be great to go. With Georgia's great November, December. But just get to that 12-team playoff. Hold your ground. And I think that's all we really ask for as a fan base. Would a win be incredible? Yes, got to watch the Ole Miss baseball team win abroad at 3 a.m. on bad TV.
Yep.
So if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. Well, I can't watch these guys, every day and get crappy TV access. So who knows? Maybe this is the year.
Well, and to me, I think that's the interesting part. Lane doesn't, Ole Miss doesn't win the SEC championship, but they get to host a home game. That's going to be the game changer with that new 12-team playoff. Those first-round games are going to be on college campuses. And one of the things that I think has been really good is Lane has not only challenged the collective, he's challenged the student section, he's challenged the fans to come and make it a true home field advantage. The 2023 season was SEC Saturday night from Oxford, Mississippi. It seemed like every night on Saturday at 7:30 Central or 8 East, they were in Oxford, and it was an electric atmosphere. And Lane also taught them. They won big. They won the shootout with LSU, but they also won ugly. They went to Jordan-Hare this year, and it was ugly. It was not pretty. The offense looked like crap, yet they kept going, and they were able to win. Mm-hmm. So to me, Lane is going to be able to take that program to another level. He's still there. It doesn't seem like there's that NFL. I'm kind of looking around. I know his feet seem to be firmly planted. I know his eldest daughter is there. We'll see what happens with Knox. So whether Knox goes to USC or maybe goes with Uncle Sark down to UT. We'll see what happens. But kind of a final thought from you. What is your prediction for the 2024 season? Lay it out for the regular season and where are they going in the playoff?
I'm going to say for a final thought, you mind if I kind of wrap it all up in one?
100%. Go for it.
I'm gonna say like another 11-2, just because I loved the 11-2. I loved what they built. I would love to see them win it all. Am I gonna start tweeting mean things? If they don't, no. But if we make that 12-team playoff, I'm looking at exposure to the program, exposure to the school, and finally just some respect for the Ole Miss football program. I'm tired of getting on the internet and just reading comments about negative Ole Miss football things in the year 2023, 2024, because I was there in 2018. I saw what the program could do. I'm sorry, I was there in 2014, 15 was huge. 2018, not so much. But there needs to be some respect for the program. Is it a true blue blood? No. But you can't keep just tearing it down as it's nothing, as it's a fluke every year when we come to play. So I'm going to say 11-2, and this is all predicated on the offensive side. Jackson Dart, I'm not going to say the H word, but it's got to be a big season. He's good. He's cocky. I'm not asking for the H word. I'm asking for
sliding instead of diving into a defensive tackle.
I'm asking to stay healthy. We saw it with Matt Corral. The guy loved to try to kill himself on the field every week, and that just we can't. I was at the game. We lost to Baylor, and Matt Corral just threw his body on the line. We put what's his face, and he's at Illinois now. And we didn't put John Rice Plumlee in. My father, God bless him, he's getting older, and one day I'm going to have to stand in front of a crowd and give his eulogy, but I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about having to admit that he was right about John Rice Plumlee and how he was truly the world's greatest thing at Ole Miss. Because he'll go on for hours. I told him this morning, I was like, I'm getting on a podcast tonight, and I got to talk about John Rice Plumlee. He's like, you have to. He's the world's greatest thing. But we're talking a big year for Jackson Dart. We have to have those O-line transfers from Washington and I think North Carolina, Diego Pounds.
Yep.
They need to show up. It's got to be a big, ugly front line. We're looking at Jackson Dart having an H-level year. Wide receiver university, huge. Come on in. On the defensive side of the ball, there's no reason not to be great. That secondary is kind of lacking, but you have Walter Nolan. You have the Chris Paul Jr., linebacker out of Arkansas, and you got the Florida, I butchered his name, Princely Umanmielen.
Yep, number one edge, right? Number one edge.
Number one edge rusher. There's no reason not to be great on the defensive side of the ball, which is exciting. It's that land shark defense we haven't seen in years. It was almost back this year.
Land shark got you.
Where did it boot me? Did
land shark?
Okay.
Yep, land shark. So hang on, ready?
Yep.
You're excited? 1 minute, finish up, and then tell us where we can find you.
Yes. Okay.
Land this plane, baby. Land it.
We're landing it. We're bringing down. I'm sorry, world's worst Wi-Fi out of Japan these days. What am I paying for? What am I paying?
I'm leaving this part in because it's funny. And you know what? I will figure it out. But all right, you ready? Land this plane and tell us where we can find you.
Okay. Who's out at Ole Miss? I wrote this. This is a great joke, Craig. We lost Caden Costa to Memphis. Death taxes us losing a kicker to Memphis. It happens every year. God bless. R.I.P. We lost Michael Trigg to Baylor, I believe. Kind of a bum. He did nothing at Ole Miss. I apologize, but this is where it shows me the portal is hit or miss. He was big, didn't pan out. We lost John Rice Plumlee years ago, but I still remember it. Still very sad.
Poor dad.
And Monty Kiffin needs to have a big year. Lane's dad, he's still on the staff, still getting paid. It's a no-show job. It's something like Sopranos. But Monty Kiffin, you got to have a big year. But with that closing up, Craig, thank you. I apologize for the Wi-Fi situation. You guys can follow me. It's on Instagram, AJ Hosko, HOSKO _. That's kind of where I'm at. I got my link to where I kind of write occasionally on there. Sometimes it's about college football. Sometimes it's about college bars. But that's kind of where you can find me. If not, you can find me in a dingy lit bar in anywhere from Australia to Taipei. Been there and just taking it day by day.
Awesome. Alex, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Follow Alex for all of your hot takes for Ole Miss. And also, he's a pretty damn good writer and he's got some really great travel stuff. Thank you, my friend.
Craig.
I hope you have a great day.
Appreciate you, Craig.
Yep,
Thank you
bye.
too.
Welcome back to It Just Means More Football and Coffee. Man, what a great interview. I loved hearing from you guys and just kind of hearing how you bounced off of each other. You can tell that you have some chemistry there. And we love that. We love that Japan connection a little bit, kind of breaking it down. But what an amazing opportunity for us with technology to connect with somebody in Japan, right? So as we close up here, a tip of the cap to our writing base. If you don't know, Craig and I both write for Last Word on college football, and he covers Georgia and the SEC. I'm covering South Carolina, and here we're talking college football. We're talking SEC football specifically. As we look at this, Craig, what you got this week before we get into this last topic?
I'm gonna take a look at. I'm gonna start grading some SEC coaching hires. I'm gonna look at it from a perspective of resume and recruiting, and I'll probably throw a little emotion in there too. But we'll see if it goes through with the editors or not.
So, yeah, speaking of, I told Craig, breaking news as we got on. We're recording on a Thursday here. You're getting this on Saturday, but Sean Elliott, head coach at Georgia State, is leaving.
My alma mater.
Reportedly, Matt Zenitz from CBS is reporting that he's expected to be hired as tight ends coach and running game coordinator at South Carolina. Gamecocks, baby, got our guy back. So excited to see what that looks like. I've got some. Speaking of South Carolina coaches, that's gonna slide perfectly into my schedules. I'm doing a coaching staff breakdown. Had Joe DeCamillis, new special teams coordinator, up last week. Got some really cool stuff from an interview with Sean McVay and what he said about him and his time with the Rams. An article that came out this past week. And next week we're going to continue that. And as Justin Stepp moved on to a role at Illinois, we will look at Sean Elliott and what he brings to the table. So one last topic for you. The SEC schedule. Is it 8 games? Is it 9 games? It's up for debate.
It's not a debate.
You tell me what you think.
It's not a debate. It's 9 games. Look at Georgia's schedule. They have 2 neutral site games in 2024. They're playing Clemson in Atlanta. They're playing Florida and Jacksonville. It's time to bring the cocktail party to the hedges and to the swamp. And also, we're going to 16 teams. We need to see each other. We need to play this round robin. The fans deserve it. TV ratings deserve it. We need a 9-game schedule. Is it going to be harder? Yes, but guess what? And here's where it's going to help. The Bulls, there's no longer going to be a 6-1 requirement because of this expanded playoff as it continues to grow. No longer going to need a 6-game. We just need inventory. So the Bulls are going to say, hey, listen, we're going to take some folks. So don't worry if you're 5-7. Don't worry if you're 4-8. You're going to make a bowl because you're going to bring eyes. You're going to bring TV viewership. Bring us 9 games. Give us the college football season that we want. I would go Nick Saban and say go 10, but I'm not totally crazy. So bring us 9.
Okay, so I'm going to tease a little bit. Next week, we're going to get into our tiered breakdown of teams in the SEC and where we think people land. We're going to look at that over the next couple of weeks. But I'm going to speak for that middle tier, a tier that we're going to call the seesaw group, and I'll explain that a little more next week. But as we look at these teams who are in the middle, and I'll speak, I won't say South Carolina because that's my school. We'll look at somebody like a Kentucky or even a Florida right now, or an A&M, I would say. These types of schools, if we go to 9 wins, then you are adding another game to that schedule. Actually, you know what? I'll go with actually South Carolina, Kentucky, and Florida make a lot of sense because you have rivals that are in the ACC that are that you're going to play every year. So automatically in your non-con, you're going to get one of those Power 5 teams. For South Carolina, you've been playing in the SEC East, and so you've been guaranteed to get 2 top 10 teams in Georgia and Clemson every single year. And so adding another SEC game is just a lot of wear and tear on the team. You have to be really strategic about how you break that schedule down so that you don't load it up in any one section and just destroy the morale of the team over the course of the season. If you want to keep things moving forward in a positive direction, adding another SEC game is putting too much weight on the middle of the conference. And so I like staying with 8. I think that from a financial standpoint, from a viewership standpoint, from a purist, let's get the best quality football standpoint, we're going to 9. I agree with you. I'm giving my opinion of I like 8 better, but I don't think that we're actually going to stick with 8. I think that you have some coaches who are going to continue to advocate for 8. The one caveat that I think is
Mark
important,
Stoops and wanting to play a max schedule. I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
well,
off there.
Kentucky routinely plays a max schedule. Their non-con is horrendous, but we'll get into that when we break down the teams. And maybe if we get Kevin McGuffey on here, we can go back and forth with him a little bit about that. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the one caveat that I have in this is the 12-team playoff. Ross Dellinger reported earlier this week, Yahoo Sports got information that there's talks of going to 14 to 16 teams in the playoffs. So expansion is not done. And so it's going to be, quote unquote, easier to get into the playoff. And so even for teams at the top of the SEC who may have said, hey, in order for us to get into the 4-team playoff, we don't need 9 conference games because it's hard enough for us to get through 8 with 1 loss. Now you're going to be able to get into the playoff with 2 losses and maybe even 3 losses if your strength of schedule is there. And especially if we push it up to 16, you're going to be able to get in. They're going to get in at 10-2. They're not going to have a 3rd loss, but we'll get into that next week too. So if you're listening on podcast, Craig just threw up the hook on, and so I'm referencing
horns
Texas.
up. There was no horns down. It was horns up.
Yeah, he did it up. We'll have that horns down discussion at some point as well. No, I think 8 is the better route for the whole of the conference. But I think that from a money standpoint and from a viewership standpoint, 9 is the direction that they need to go. And so that's the direction that they're going to go. So it's just a matter of when. It's just a matter of how quickly can they do that. You got news from, speaking of Texas, you got news from their AD saying that that's where we're headed yesterday, where that leaks. I don't necessarily love the new guy, the new kid on the block breaking the conference news. Leave that to Greg Byrne or somebody who's been around here for a minute. Somebody
Please.
who
It's not Texas that they're not a little flash and a little loud and out of place. So
that's absolutely true. I wouldn't expect them to do anything different to come in that way. Actually, I expect a little more flair as they come in. That's just what they do. They're Texas, everything's bigger. So but still, new kid on the block doesn't get to break the hey, we're headed to 9. We're headed to 9 news. But I think it's coming up. I think by 2026, we will see them head to 9. So I'm going to just hold on to my 8 while I got it. I'm going to take Old Dominion and Akron and Wofford and Clemson and roll with it this year, because the Gamecocks may need that in a tough year with a new quarterback out there. So anyway, again, we are excited that you've been with us today. Maybe you finished up your breakfast and you're ready to hit your Saturday head on. Hope that we got you started with some incredible discussion here on college football and what the calendar should really look like. Thanks so much to my partner, Craig McMichael. Thanks a lot to Alex Hosko for signing in with us as well. Craig had a great 12-month breakdown, and so we'll vote for him. We're going to write him in absentee when the position comes up.